All right, welcome everybody back to another episode of the Big Douglas Show. It's an Inside the Command Center Friday. We'll try to get you as close to the action as we can. Today, my guest is Michael Phillips. Michael, how are you?
Hey, doing great. Great to be here. Wish we had better topics to talk about, but that's the hand we've been dealt.
We've been dealt that hand a lot, Michael, so we're used to
We're used
playing
to it.
it, I think. There have been a lot of changes going around, a lot with you too. Now 10 to 12 on 910 The Fan in Richmond, yes. How do you like the radio? Did you do radio prior to this?
No, I prided myself on being a guest. So now I'm on the other side as well, firing questions at people, and we have a ton of fun. It's not just Commanders, tons of Richmond stuff. We're the home of the Rams. VCU basketball is very big in Richmond. Of course, tons of great college sports here. So no shortage of stuff to talk about. And then lucky enough to get to write for the Washington Times this year, kind of keep me in the room with the Commanders. So writing my stories for them, and that's been a ton of fun as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say I wondered because I had looked at your Twitter bio and I thought that when Paris left for New Orleans that you had taken over the gig there, but it wasn't there. So I wasn't sure if that something had fallen through or it wasn't there, but you are writing for the Times also.
Yeah, so Paris was a full-time employee there. He did also Capitals and Wizards and
Wizards.
and all that other good stuff. I'm just on a freelance basis with them. It'll just be Commanders coverage. So I don't know how regular that'll be in the off season. I think this off season will be very regular. But maybe someday we'll have a quiet off season and there will be less. But no, he was a full-time employee. I'm just freelance every now and then. They can call me out of the bullpen. I'll try to throw that fastball.
You've been writing for a long time. You said you haven't done the radio before. Have you done the radio long enough to have a preference between the two?
Yeah, I'll always be a writer at heart, but I kind of merge both worlds. I usually do write out my first segment of the radio show, kind of give my opinion on something going on, flex both muscles a little bit. I do love the interaction with the audience, and I know you get that here, and we get that on Twitter and all that. But it's great on the radio to hear from people and get guests on and have time to dig in deep with them and go deep. So I love both. That's my politically correct answer. I'll always be a writer at heart, but the radio has been a ton of fun and reception's been great. And yeah, I didn't know what it would be. I didn't, you sign a contract to do the radio show by the year. I actually didn't sign one. I said, let's do this and see how it goes. But they want to keep me around and I want to stay around. So we're going to make it work.
I have never interviewed a writer that didn't say, I'm a writer at heart and I love writing. However, I enjoy radio, podcasting, whatever it is that the ancillary thing is. But writers always want to make sure people know that they're writers first.
Exactly.
All right, let's get on to some of this Commanders football team, Michael. It has been an interesting year. Eric Bieniemy's style has allowed Sam Howell to put up huge numbers across the board, good and bad. Lots of touchdowns, lots of interceptions, lots of sacks. Where are we right now with Sam Howell? Because if he's the guy, it allows you to, as we know, allows you to do a whole lot more things than if you're back to replacing quarterback next year. How has he been for you so far this year?
He's a guy. He's not the guy in my estimation so far, right? And it's not an insult. Kirk Cousins is a guy. He's not the guy, but he's a guy. The difference is Sam Howell makes about $34 million a year less than Kirk Cousins. And as you note, you can do a lot with that money. Having that rookie contract just affords you so much more flexibility, more ability to go spend $90 million in cap space this offseason. Look, we got 5 more games. Obviously, we'll reserve the right to change our minds based on what happens. But I've seen enough that I can roll into 24 very comfortably with Sam Howell under center. Let him grow for a year, learn for a year. I'm not signing him to a 9-year extension, a Patrick Mahomes deal, anything like that. I think he's probably closer to the middle of the pack than he is the top if you're ranking the quarterbacks in the league. But that contract, that rookie deal, you can do so much more with an average quarterback on a rookie deal than you can with a good quarterback on a $40 million a year deal. Ask the Giants about that, right? Like that gets you stuck pretty quickly. So without lavishing and heaping praise on him, he's done enough for me to keep riding with him.
He hasn't. It would be nice imagining being able to beef up the line a little bit, maybe adding a weapon, the defense pulling their weight, and see what this guy can do.
Maybe a big tight end.
It's unfortunate because they don't have. He's not one of these first rounders with a 5th-year option. So they if they keep him for next year, they've got to know by the end of the year, right? Because they don't have that extra time to let the contract work out.
Yeah, you're also. I think we're all working under the assumption it's a new coaching staff, a new, GM, new regime next year. So it is fair to give them that year with Sam Howell, regardless of what we think of him and regardless of what Ron thinks of him. They are going to install a system and a full year of evaluation in their system, which could look different, could look better. Get him a nice big tight end, get him some offensive line help. He could improve, just off of the pieces around him. He could struggle in a different system. That's of course possible as well. So, yes, next year will be a make or break year for Howell in a lot of ways as then they walk down contract road after it. But I think that he's earned the right to have that year with the new staff, with the new operation. And so that's the most you can ask for, I think, coming into this year. I think you would have graded this a success if you were given the opportunity to say, hey, at the end of the year, he's not best in the league, but you bring him back for 24. I think that's a win.
Put you on the spot here. You kind of mentioned the difference between a guy and the guy. How many of the guys do you think there are in the league right now?
Jalen's the guy. Mahomes is the guy. I think Dak's the guy. I think when he's rolling, he's good. I'm willing to acknowledge he's on the bubble, but Dak's worth paying for, I think. AFC,
Lamar is the guy.
Lamar, Burrow. I'm not the biggest Josh Allen guy, but Josh Allen's the guy. Justin Herbert, of course. So yeah, there's 8 to 10 of them in the league. Aaron Rodgers pre-injury, of course, was in that club. Not everybody gets to have one of those. And unfortunately, those are the teams left standing at the end. Now you've got other ways to do it. Brock Purdy's not the guy. He's a guy. But he's in the right system. He's doing the right things. The Ravens, of course, have proven you can win the Super Bowl with the Trent Dilfer. So it's certainly doable, but life's harder without the guy.
You had mentioned that you think there'll be all new everything when it comes to coaching and front office. I completely agree with you. I think most people feel that way at this point. How will you remember Ron Rivera?
I mean, he was dealt an impossible hand, and he did the best he could with it. I think he handled.
How he signed up for that hand.
Yes, he did. 2 owner changes, 2 disgraced owners getting run out of town. COVID on top of that, name change on top of that, cancer on top of that. No coach they could have hired 4 years ago would be in a successful situation right now.
Correct.
I believe. I just don't think there was an option that would have been would have taken the job and would have had success here. I hope that they announce it the week before the last game, so that the last game is not, get Ron out of here. But Ron is leaving. Thank you for all you did. This is not a circus. We've seen the circus come to town before many times. He's not going scorched earth on his way out. Wish him the best. He's not the guy to take this franchise to the next level. But dang, if he didn't do the best he could for 4 straight years, he's not good enough coach to be in the modern NFL and take a team to the Super Bowl. But he's also a guy who the players played hard for through a heck of a lot of adversity.
And you still see that in the locker room. The notion, we hear that a lot, right? At the end of a coach's tenure, he's lost the locker room. That's not what's going on here, right?
No, not at all. And they'll give him an endorsement and a pat on the back on the way out. And even Jack Del Rio did not lose his team. They just played so poorly in consecutive games. There was no choice but to make a move, right? Like, you lost to Tommy DeVito at home. Dak Prescott's eating turkey legs on the sideline. Like,
incredible.
There was no choice. The hand got forced. And, I don't think we'll get to that point with Ron Rivera. I think they'll lose to the Dolphins. I'm going to pick them to lose to the Dolphins. But I don't think we'll get to that embarrassment point again this year where something has to be done for the sake of the fan base and the sanity. I think that Ron Rivera will continue to have the team well-equipped and playing hard through the rest of the year. We've watched him this week in practice, coaching up the defense every day, and seems to have a pep in his step, and the defense has welcomed that. So, I think the outlook's bright.
when we listen to Ron talk about things that will need to be changed on the defense and things and going and talking to the players and doing this and simplifying it, in my mind, when I hear Ron say that, I hear myself asking Ron, why? Why does it take firing somebody? Why does it take embarrassment to get to a point where it feels like even the most casual of fans have said, don't we do this better? Why are we doing this?
It feels like a defensive coordinator has two buttons, right? Like more schemes and simpler schemes, right? Whichever one's not working, you got to push the other button. So more schemes wasn't working, so we got to be simpler. If simpler doesn't work, we got to add some more blitzes and got to have some more scheme. Those are the two buttons available to a defensive coordinator. When you're losing, you got to push the other one. Going around in circles and it hurts your head, right? We talked to some guys and I agree things need to change. Okay, so what Jack did was bad. I did not say that. I support everything Jack did. Okay, so you're going to run things like Jack? Not at all. Things got to change. We need some change around here. Oh, 5 more weeks.
5 more weeks is it? And I've heard people say that there's this school of thought that says, get Eric Bieniemy in for a couple of games at least as head coach, and let's see what it looks like. Just like players like to put game on tape, everybody's looking at the game tape. Do you buy into the idea that Eric Bieniemy needs some game tape, if you will, as the head coach, and should he be getting it here?
I don't think he's earned the opportunity to be head coach in the sense of for this team on an interim basis, in the sense that I don't think the offense is running smoothly enough that I want to put more things on his plate. I think he has done significantly better than Scott Turner. I think he has done some great things with this offense. I really love a lot of his concepts. And I think he's proven himself as an offensive coordinator, as a play caller, and as a very legitimate candidate for head coaching openings. I also think for this team, right? So we're not here to launch Eric Bieniemy's career. We're here to talk about the Washington Commanders, right? And the ownership is here to boost the Washington Commanders. And that's a tough reality of the business, right? Like these last 5 weeks are not about helping Eric Bieniemy look better in an interview. These 5 weeks are about the Washington Commanders. And the most important thing for the Washington Commanders, I think you would agree, is Sam Howell's development. That's the most important storyline for the next 5 weeks. And they still have some work to do. There's still some rough spots offensively. There's still some work that needs to be done. I want Eric Bieniemy spending 100% of his time developing Sam Howell, developing the offense, getting as much progress and improvement as he can. And I think he is a candidate for the head coaching job here, jobs elsewhere. I think he's proven that through his offensive work this year. But I think if you want to maximize Sam Howell, it is the correct move to leave him at offensive coordinator and spend these next 5 weeks maximizing Sam Howell.
I think that's well said, and it's exactly how I see it too. That if that's the goal, as they've told us all year, was to prepare Sam Howell, then continue preparing Sam Howell. I think that's right. What have you thought about Eric Bieniemy took Sam Howell to the pool and threw him in the deep end and said, learn how to swim? What were you surprised by the move? Do you think it's worked? And just your general reaction to, I mean, they did. It was a sink or swim, right? They threw a ton of stuff at him, asked him to throw the ball 50 times a game and said, let's get after it, kid. What was your thoughts about the plan?
The only time I've kind of been like, no, was at the end of the Bears game when it was out of reach and they kept having him throw and he kept getting sacked. And it was like, don't break the kid. Like like this is lost. I get what we're trying to do here, but don't break the kid. That he's been sacked so many times. He's a tough kid. He's resilient. I love what I've seen from him in that regard. But don't do this to him unnecessarily. Say end of the Dallas game, there were fewer of those snaps, but it was like, hey, okay, I get that you want him to get every snap he possibly can, but we also got to get him to week 18 as well. And it doesn't do anybody any good to have a broken Sam Howell. Outside of that, I love it. I love the trust they've given him, and I love how he has validated that trust by playing better his second time against opponents, against concepts, against things that are new that he's seeing. Dallas is a great defense, but I think, leading into that Dallas game, you'd say largely he had the sack problem under control, I think to a large extent, and that shows that he's learning how to swim and he's learning how to do that, which is fantastic, of course. Now, I think that we have a really tough stretch coming up here. Jets defense is good. Niners defense is good. They're going to close against the Cowboys defense. I think he's going to have to be even better to maintain for these final games here. So I think it's important that he get as much work in as possible, improve as much as possible now, because it could be a rough ride those last 3 weeks against some elite defenses.
Okay, no doubt. I've been asking around, maybe you know, maybe you don't know, and that's okay. But when can teams start talking to other, like to GMs that already have jobs?
So there's a difference between a horizontal move and a vertical move. So if you're talking to another GM, you've got to get permission through the team. Generally speaking, they're going to want you to wait until after the year. If you're talking about an assistant GM or an assistant personnel person, those people generally have to be / by etiquette are released to talk about head GM openings, because that's considered a vertical move for them. And, in the case of minority candidates, obviously the team gets a 3rd round draft pick. So they encourage that and try to continue to develop that as well. I would guess it's all going to happen through third parties behind the scenes. Now, there's no advantage to publicly doing it now. There's enough back channels. There's enough, even the coaching candidates who are legit candidates have probably reached out to agents, intermediaries, other people to gauge the interest so that the team can start doing their background research. Nobody's going to be caught off guard here. But the NFL has been more vigilant in recent years about strongly discouraging movement before the season ends, and to a larger extent before the Super Bowl ends. That's a real focus this year, is they don't want teams hiring coaches while the playoffs are going on. They really want that cycle to get pushed back to after the Super Bowl. I don't know how successful they're going to be at that, because those fan bases are clamoring for the name, for the publicity tour, for all those things to get going. So I don't know that they'll be
what better time than Super Bowl row, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I don't know that the NFL is gonna ever be able to fully nip that, but they had a big problem last year when the Eagles, Jonathan Gannon, was spending the week planning out his Arizona staff instead of planning how to sack Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl, right? Big image problem there for the league. So they're really trying to push that process back. But at the same time, I do think, they're doing the work right now for sure. I think you'll have a GM, then you'll have a coach, and nobody's going to be left out because of timing for sure.
So if optics were not a part of things, if they so chose to, they could fire Marty Morningwood or Martin Mayhew tomorrow and hire, say, the assistant GM for the Eagles.
Keep in mind that Ron Rivera has final personnel say, though. So if that person's contract gave them final personnel say, you would have to move Ron along first before you sign them to a contract that gave them final say over the roster.
Now it's interesting about Ron, because you're right, and that was the original deal as I understood it. But if you go to the website, Ron no longer is listed as VP of football ops or whatever it is, like he once was. As soon as Harris bought the team, the website changed where it has Ron Rivera just as head football coach.
Yeah, and I haven't seen Ron's contract, so I don't know what's written in there contractually.
Right.
I would say another advantage to waiting could be, the college scouts are all out on the road. This is the last weekend of college football. December's when they come in and assemble their boards. And this team has very legitimate scouts who do a great job and put their boards together. But if you wait a little longer, your GM may come in with knowledge of a second board as well, and a second set of reports from his scouts, which could enhance your draft process, so to speak, if he's used to working with those guys instead of these guys.
What did it say to you that they hired Eugene Chen first?
I mean, that is priority one for Josh Harris. And he spoke yesterday. Nikki Javala had a story and a video with some of his comments at I think it was a Sports Business Journal convention. And I was struck by when he said, hey, we understand there are no shortcuts to success. We're going to take our time here. And I read that, right. The conventional wisdom is you can't do the process that they did with the 76ers. It doesn't work in the NFL. And I still believe that. And I think he believes that too. But I get the sense he's going to really put in a lot of back-end infrastructure, in terms of scouting, development, tools of that nature. Look, I was talking to Logan Thomas in the locker room the other day. He said, it's not window dressing. They've really enhanced our facilities, our rehabs, our ability to bring family to games, things like that. Little things that make it a place that you can recommend people come play in Washington instead of telling them to come stay away. When these guys for the bye week, they're all going to go back to their colleges. They're all going to go hang out in those weight rooms. And you want them to say, come play in Washington. It's fun. You get taken care of, which is not what they've said the last few years, obviously. And I think those comments from Josh Harris told me he doesn't view this as a one-year fix. He views this as a long-term project, and maybe we should too.
Yeah, it was interesting, the comment, right? I can get you to eight.
Yeah, we can shortcut to that.
I can get that real fast, but that's not what you want. Longevity takes more work. I also thought it was interesting that he said, that the name change is not something that he's interested in or worried about. And all the comments basically were like, oh, this means they're going to change the name. And I was thinking to myself, no, I'm pretty sure that's not what he said at all right here. A man that just spent $6 billion has got a lot of work to do. I'm not sure it's high up on his priority list. One thing that I do know is high up on the high priority list is the facilities in Ashburn need an upgrade. Will they? What will they do, Michael, with that land in Ashburn? Are they going to continue to keep everything out there and refurbish? Will they build something in Maryland? What is the plan, at least for the practice facilities?
Sure. So you got a lot of factors here. One is they want the stadium done as quickly as possible. Two is the stadium may or may not hold the practice facility, right? That's part of it. So the draw of that is, if you're going to have bars and restaurants and stuff, it brings more people down there every day to watch them practice and watch training camp and things like that. There's also the matter of where do the players prefer to live, and I'm not here to diss Landover, but players generally enjoy living with their families in Loudoun County, and so that's a factor here as well. I think a split is absolutely still in play, where you have the stadium in one place, the practice facility stays in Loudoun. Yeah, you also say that land is really valuable.
Exactly.
And I remind you, he paid $6 billion for the team. So, if it's not bolted down, you can sell it for a couple bucks. That helps retire that debt a little quicker. So that's a factor as well. Maybe a site even somewhere else that we're not aware of. So you've got GM, coach, team president, stadium. Like, we've got 4 mega storylines this offseason. It's going to be an eventful January through March for sure, because they want all of those facility questions answered as soon as possible. Because if the answer is we can open up a stadium for you at RFK in 28, well, okay, now maybe you don't put a lot of money into Ashburn. Like, that's not too far away. If your people come back and say we can open at RFK in 31, well, you probably need to tear Ashburn down and rebuild a new one for 10 years. So there's a lot of domino effect questions there that need to be asked along the way.
Is it worth even speculating at this point where the stadium will be?
Oh, I love speculating about where the stadium
How do you rank the 3
options? Is it worth the paper it's printed on? No, not at all.
How would you rank the 3 options as most likely at this
Everybody
point?
wants RFK, and the city wants RFK, and the Harris Group loves RFK. RFK's the 1 seed here, is absolutely the front runner. I continue to put Virginia at number 2. They are coming to play. With me doing the hand motion there of the dollar sign.
Johnny Manziel action.
The little Johnny Manziel action. I think that they want to be at RFK, and if that proves impractical, Virginia will be there with a big old pile of money. I just think the advantages of Maryland, it's easy. You've got the land. People know it. Are not compelling reasons for this ownership group right now. I think they're playing a 30-year game, not a 5-year game. And, I get the argument, like, those fans are going to leave for the Ravens because they're in Maryland. Like, dude, so many fans have left already. Like, guys trying to build a great stadium and win a Super Bowl, and then people will come back. He's not trying to cling to something. He knows what he bought into.
Well, and folk from Southern Virginia have been traveling to Maryland for a long time and haven't quit.
They can find
this notion that if it goes to Virginia or Maryland, somehow can't drive the hour to get there kind of makes me laugh a little bit. If they do Virginia, it's down, it's over there off Route 1 by Woodbridge and not out in Ashburn. Is that because they don't have enough land to do it in Ashburn? Why wouldn't they just put a stadium out there?
I wouldn't rule out the Quarry site. There's been a lot of false starts there, and I know at one point it was sold to a different group. I think it's a great site. I think from a corporate sponsorship and hospitality standpoint, it's a phenomenal site next to Dulles on the Silver Line. Big name corporations, Capital One, all the defense companies, all headquartered, within 10 minutes of that stadium site. I think there's a lot of real positives that, feel free to yell at me in the comments. Like, I'm not going to Loudoun County. Like, once they win, you'll go to Loudoun County. Like, go ahead, mark down my words there. I think there's a lot of positives to that site. I also think it's really expensive to develop. Like, just doing anything in Loudoun costs so much money. Like a Bud Light in Loudoun, it's so much more expensive than it is in Woodbridge. So that's a factor too. Money's a factor here. That's why I think that
the one at Woodbridge, Michael, would be over there on the Potomac. Is that where that site is?
I think that one's they've moved on from. Now the original Woodbridge site was right off of 95, kind of by the IKEA a little bit there. I am not ruling out
the baseball stadium, right?
I think further Virginia sites will come into play as we go here. Think about what Amazon did in Crystal City. You say like, well, where can you find, 5 blocks of land in the city? Like, they found it for Amazon. If Virginia wants to find it, they'll find it.
Right. What do you make of what they'll do on defense? They shipped out the 2 DNs. You can tell they've got a lack of pass rush. What was the plan? Let me restart. Let me redo this. I want to kick Ron on his way out, but what was the plan as you can see it from this last draft?
Well,
the last draft frustrates me, Michael.
Sure. You had a corner who's going to be a playmaking guy who's going to create takeaways, who ended up not creating takeaways and has spent time on the bench. You go to Quan Martin for depth, and now you're playing Percy Butler instead. And you grab a center who you're not using as well. The frustrating part is, you left the offensive line largely untouched, and the offensive line we knew was going to be bad. It has been bad. That's the frustrating part, right? Like, you had a need. We knew you had a need. You didn't address the need. That needs come back to bite you in a really important way with Sam Howell. That's to me the frustrating part.
Did they draft Fidarian Mathis 2 years ago, worried about Deron Payne leaving, and then did they subsequently draft Quan Martin in case they couldn't get Cam Curl re-signed?
Well, I still think they need more at safety. I honestly, I'd look into spending some of that free agency money there. I think Fidarian Mathis was an interesting one because I do think that pick was made assuming Payne or Allen would leave, and then neither of them did. And so now, you got that logjam situation there. I think it's safety, man. They're still not set at safety. Give me more safeties. Bring in more playmaking talent. I'd love to sign Cam Curl. I do like Cam Curl a lot, but also more, bigger, better. That's how we've been saying that for 20 years now. But they're just not good enough at the safety position
or the linebacker position, which is a whole different story. I've said often, I think they would have been better off keeping Deron Payne and Montez Sweat. I know they didn't want to pay that big contract, but I think I would have kept those two and moved Chase and John Allen just because of, if nothing more than allocation for the position. Do you think both those D tackles will still be on the team next year?
I do, because I just think they have so much salary cap space to play with. You don't have to make those tough decision moves, right? Like, so 2-3 years from now, if we're hopefully talking about how do you get this roster ready for an NFC title run, now you make tough decisions, right? Now you say, okay, we got to do this so that we can get this missing piece guy elsewhere. They just have enough draft picks, enough money now. Like, no, kick that can down the road. No reason to make that decision if you don't have to. You're a couple of years away from tough choices.
A couple interesting names that may or may not be back next year. I'll throw a couple out. I'm curious to see your thoughts on whether you want or do not want. Curtis Samuel been really good this year. He's been fairly healthy. You can kind of see what they were hoping to get out of him. Is that a guy you'd bring back next year?
I love what Curtis Samuel's brought to the table. My number is 10 or under, right? If you can get him for,
Yep.
a reasonable price, I'm in. If some other team decides that's our guy and offers him 15, I'm you can't keep everybody. I think in the salary cap world, you got to kind of set those numbers and play that game.
Antonio Gibson quietly is one of the better third down backs in the league. I know that's not what I think people envisioned was like, oh, he's one of the better third down backs, but that is an important role on a football team. Antonio Gibson, would you bring him back?
I'm checking in with the new coach. If the new coach likes him, likes his style, yeah, absolutely. If the new coach has a guy in mind who he wants, bring in his guy. But I agree with you. Yeah, if I were the new coach, I'd keep him around. I'm generally pleased with what he brings to the table.
Do you prefer the new head coach be a former defensive coordinator or offensive coordinator? Does that matter to you for your head coach?
The numbers say offense is probably better because you don't lose them as quickly. I don't know that I have strong feelings on the matter. If you grab a defensive mind, there's the case to be made. Maybe they would want to keep the enemy around and so you get a 2-for-1 in some ways. I wouldn't mandate that of anybody. I would let them assemble their own staff. But if they decide to go that way, that could be an option for them. But no preference here.
Logan Thomas, would you bring him back?
I think you need a playmaking tight end. I love Logan Thomas, so it hurts me to say that. That's a position where if you have an elite tight end, you can do so much in the NFL. And it's such look at the best teams and what they get out of that position. And Logan Thomas isn't that.
So you're in favor of trading back to 10 and taking Brock Bowers?
I love Brock Bowers. Let's go. Let's go.
One more. Kendall Fuller has sneakily been the best corner on the team.
Mm-hmm.
I think his contract's up, or he has one more year, which you'd want to rework. What is your thoughts on Kendall Fuller next year? He's only like 29 years old too. It's kind of odd with Kendall, right?
Yeah, keep him. He's an NFL caliber, cornerback. Don't make him more than he is. Don't give him, CB1 playmaker money. But yeah, if you can get a reasonable deal there, absolutely keep him. He's a starter in the NFL. He's put up with a lot in his time in Washington, so he can. And he's got that kind of quiet leader nature to him.
And finally, you mentioned Cam Curl, fan favorite. He's an interesting one, I think, when it'll come to contract talks. I've said it a bunch on this podcast. Him and his agent are going to go in and say, look, you don't win a ton of football games when I'm not on the football field. Mm-hmm. And the people on the other side will say, well, we don't want to pay a ton of money for a guy that hasn't had a turnover since his rookie season. Where is the number? I've said this before. I think the last safety that got paid is Marcus Williams to the Ravens. It was about $14 million a year, 75 total, somewhere in that neighborhood. Now he's more of a free safety than a strong safety. What is the number for Cam Curl?
This is a tough question. Yeah, because I like Cam Curl, and I don't think Cam Curl's elite. I think he's very good. I think you need very good football players to make a football team. I could do 12. I think I could. Yeah. I don't think I'd flinch at that. If the market goes bananas and you got to go 14, I can go 14. I can live with that.
But we're not resetting the safety market for Cam Curl.
I'm not resetting the safety market for it. But good news. I don't think any other teams are either.
I think you're right. I think you're right about that. Interesting thing that when Ron Rivera, you think the roster's better now than when Ron Rivera got here?
Nah, I think it's about the same.
About the same.
Yeah.
It's just flipped. There's more talent on offense now than there was on defense. I think there was more talent on defense than there was on offense when he got here. That was kind of weird to me.
I wonder if that reflects the coach, right? So Rivera's a defensive coach, so he said, I'll get offensive talent and I'll coach up my defense. Whereas Jay Gruden, let's draft defensively. I'll coach up the offense because I'm Jay Gruden. I can draw something in the dirt that'll work. I wonder if there's anything to that.
Well, it's interesting, and I talked to Sean King on the former quarterback on the podcast one time, kind of asking him how it works. And he said, here's the thing I'll tell you between defensive coaches and offensive coaches being the head coach. And his was the opposite. He said when Dungy was with, they think about the defenses that they had. And then as soon as Gruden came into Tampa Bay, they started drafting and picking all offensive guys. So it's kind of weird how that works. Michael, how far away in your mind is this team from being where we want? I know they said it's a long process. How many years do you think it takes to where we're getting back to where we want to be at?
I think you could be there in 2 years. I think next year you can get back to 9-8, and I think then the next year you could do it. It's a quick league. Eagles did it in 2 years. Niners built in 3 years. It's very doable to build quickly in this league if you have salary cap space and draft picks. And what do you know? They have salary cap space and draft picks.
Last one. The question du jour is, would you take Marvin Harrison Jr. if he falls to you, even if the top offensive tackle is on the board?
I love Marvin Harrison Jr. He's fun to watch. He's electric. He is going to be a star. No questions asked. My answer is no. I would not take him. I would trade back. I would get more picks. I would, I can't. You're putting that engine in a Toyota Camry right now, right? Like let's build the car and then go find the engine.
I think a lot of people just fell in love with you. Michael, as always, I have a great time when you come on. We won't wait so long for the next time. Really appreciate you coming on.
All right, take care.
All right, bud. Thank you.